In life we are grounded, but in our dreams we can fly. Go where we please, no need to land. And stop, we never try. Quiet your mind and just feel the breeze. Cause in dreams we conquer mountains and land on top of the trees. Feel so free, only stopping to breathe. Every door is open, no lock and no key. Realizing I'm free, I just fly. Yeah, I just fly.
August the 11th, 1996. John Whaley comes rushing in the barge in, the central meeting point of crop circle researchers at Alton Barnes. He has an unbelievable story to tell. He had spent the night doing a night watch on top of Oliver's castle. It was a cold and wet night, and nothing happened. He fell asleep, but was awakened by a strange sound in the early morning hours. As he got up, he saw bright balls of light rushing over a wheat field below. He grabbed his video camera and pressed record.
It's not what you see. It's what you don't see.
We've seen this footage for years. Many believe the crop circles are made by balls of light. There's also the critics who debunk the footage as darkroom trickery. For no apparent reason, I slowed the footage down and ran it backward while editing. I discovered a line of communication between the two balls of light just before the field goes down. Right before your eyes, they communicate.
Crop circles are another way that they're bringing light onto the planet to raise the vibratory rate of not only the Earth, but all of us humans on it. And wherever light shifts down or up, ignorance and darkness disappear. I know that the crop circles are being sent to the planet by a very highly evolved, benevolent race who's working overtime to bring awareness to the planet Earth.
It is believed that they are the makers of the crop circles because researchers have seen them hovering over the fields for years. They are known as orbs of light and are considered to be multidimensional beings. Some believe that they are being used by interplanetary life forms to view life on Earth and other planets, similar to looking through a window. Others believe that they are merely lost, departed souls. I wanted to know more about crop circles, so I went off to England for answers.
It's not what you see. It's what you don't see. It's not who you know. It's who you really are.
Are you willing to consider the possibility that we may be receiving telepathic and physical messages from other realms, and have been for many years? Consider this a wake-up call to listen, an invitation to experience something that few humans will ever get to see. Crop circles. Temporary temples beautifully woven through the farm fields of southern England. Lasting only a few precious months of summer, they offer brief artistry and information, and then fade quickly away into the autumn harvest. The mere presence of these massive wonders demands a redefinement of reality. They are dramatic, complex, geometric patterns crafted with unimaginable skill into crops of wheat, oat, canola, peas, beans, and even Brussels sprouts. They're showing up all over the world, and many are located on ancient ritual sites. The crops are seamlessly swirled down with the grain heads swept in common directions, creating the unmistakable three-dimensional multi-layered artwork with shading. It's stunning, especially when seen from above. People going into the fields are reporting strange mind and body sensations. Is it possible that these are messages from cultures that don't share our written or spoken language? Could these be portals to other dimensions? The intention of this film is to empower you with the information. Your perception is up to you.
Walking into the ET face in, was it 2001? And I remember walking into it and suddenly my knees just gave way. I just couldn't stand at all. And I just had to head for somewhere to lie down really fast. And when I lay down, I was just out like a light for probably about an hour and a half.
In 2001, 2 crop formations appeared near the Chilbolton radio telescope in Hampshire, England. Both were very precise and had a number of small pixels, one clearly offering a binary code pattern. A binary code is made up of zeros and ones and can be read by translating lines and spaces into decimals, which then correspond to letters. They are easily understood by computers and experts in the field. One of the formations looked like an eerie human face. The other is one of the most controversial crop circles ever, because it closely resembles a transmission that was sent into deep space in 1974. The transmission was federally funded by a government agency called SETI, or Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence. The content of the message was designed by Carl Sagan and Frank Drake. It provided basic information about human life on Earth, such as which planet we live on, what we generally look like, how tall we are, our population, the kind of telescope we used, the chemical building blocks of our genetics, and the spiral structure of our DNA. It was broadcast with 1 trillion watts from the world's largest radio telescope, called the Arecibo Tower in Puerto Rico. The message was beamed into space toward a star cluster called M13, which is 23,000 light-years away and consisted of 300,000 stars. The Chilbolton formation made crop circle history when it seemed to be a direct response to the message sent in 1974, but it returned with some distinct changes in the binary pattern. Their response seemed to show smaller bodies with larger heads. It showed a different alignment of the planets. Their response also differed by mentioning the crystalline structure of silicon. This could be one of the most significant indicators of two-way ET contact yet. The following year, England received another amazing double formation in a field, the alien face and the disk. It was similar to Chilbolton having a binary code formation and a face, plus they were both located near radio broadcasting masts. Anybody listening? The circular grid contained a binary data sequence. It was read by experts and deciphered as this: beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. Believe, there is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. I woke up early one morning at the bed and breakfast overlooking Silbury Hill. It was a glorious pink sunrise, so I grabbed my camera and began to shoot. I had heard about the mist that sits below the hill in the early morning hours, but nothing could have prepared me for this. My lens seemed to go dark. I kept on shooting.
Comprehension of knowledge, taking knowledge into action, using these knowledge here against the practice of manifestation, and therefore direction for self. All things are positive, even after your concept turns negative. Therefore, indeed, all things are. Therefore, since all is, it is good. Even after you're negative. Therefore, indeed, the concept roots in all things that can carry forth in manifest concept.
Every day was a treasure hunt, and every night a mystery. After long days of hiking through the farm fields and savoring the crop circles, we would sit on the hillsides late into the wee hours of the night, hoping to see balls of light creating a new formation right before our eyes. Some of us saw them. Others are still waiting.
That's a program here, that's my change, alteration, that's what you term peace in your concept. Express, be, exist in that little format of love. No, there is that not here, a different in that of man, only in the culture.
Are there people living on other planets right now, or other galaxies?
Affirmative.
Could you tell us which one?
All.
One of my most spectacular moments over the last 13 years was a close encounter with a ball of light, and I've had several now. One of them, or two actually of them, appeared right in front of my car. I was driving the car at Avebury here, really close by, Avebury Stone Avenue, and this beautiful milky white ball of light appeared over a crop field, flew right in front of my car, and I just could not believe my eyes. I'd seen them before, but never so up close. And then I decided, okay, something's happening here. There's obviously a very, very strong presence. I'm going to do a night watch. This was about 11 o'clock at night. I parked my car at Stone Avenue, overlooking a beautiful field where there was no formation yet. And I thought, if anything happens tonight, it's going to be in that field. And around midnight, all of a sudden, this huge red, bright red ball of light appeared. It was really, really big, several meters in diameter. It appeared out of nowhere above that field and hovered over the road behind the stones of the avenue and disappeared over Walker's Hill. And the next morning, when it started to be light, you could see the new formation in that field. And that blew me away.
I came here in England to the crop circles in 1995 with a mathematical background. So when I saw these patterns, I thought, I have to study this. Something is going on here. They really intrigue me and they really touch me from the inside and from the outside at the same time. And I studied these patterns for years. And bit by bit I came to the conclusion that actually what's going on is some kind of communication. It's a communication on different levels, on a level that I can understand. I can look at them and think, wow, that's beautiful, and that's even more beautiful. But there's also this other level that's much deeper, that on the subconscious level touched me and everybody, I think, that looked at these crop circles. And it was not until I think 2005 that I realized, even after I'd written a book about all this, that perhaps this is just radio broadcasting. So we all think we can speak to these circles, but the only thing we do is actually listening. So we can only do a one-way communication. And I didn't like that idea at all. I didn't like the fact that this could be just a one-way communication. It talks to us, we cannot talk back. I've tried to shout into radios, it never helped. And so I decided with a group of people to actually do an experiment. I was not the first one, I've not been the first one doing this experiment, but to try to talk back to it. Actually to tell the phenomenon, tell me something that I ask you to tell me. Give me a sign, in short. So we did that, and we sat down with a group of people in a pub, had a good fun, lots of good wine. And it was just a brief occasion, actually. We just looked at the field to the opposite side of the road and decided to use a shape that I had photographed that day in a church. So that it was a known shape for that church. It was known to humanity, but it had never appeared in a crop circle. We used that, we looked at the shape for perhaps a minute, 2 minutes, we talked about it, and we forgot about it. And it's 2 days later that that shape actually came in the field, and that really blew me away. That it's not only a communication that goes one way, but somehow we can talk back to it. It's this event that really convinced me that something really big is going on here.
Well, it's the early morning of the 7th of the 7th of the 7th this year, about 1:35 a.m. My friend Paula and I arrived at the top of Knapp Hill. And then around 3:13, I'm told from the timing on the tape that we all experienced a big white flash in the sky. At this point of the evening, about 3:20, it's the darkest point of the night, and as the sky was sort of really laden with clouds, there's absolutely nothing. It was a pitch black field, and there was nothing to be seen down below. But at about 20 to 4, some light was creeping in then from the east with the sun coming up, and we began to see a shadow, or what appeared to be shadows on the field. It was at this point when we looked through the camera that we all could see through the viewfinder that there was a massive, absolutely massive, spectacular formation down there below us.
to my understanding, after 10 years of research and interesting experience, there's enough physical, hard, factual data on the table that proves to me, beyond any doubt, that there's an amazing thing happening here which we're not understanding fully.
This phenomenon is probably only intended for a very small minority of humanity to absorb, because it's only a critical mass of awakened humans that will in fact absorb the energies of this time and create the great differences that are now coming.
The patterns have perfect sacred geometries, perfect symmetry, and represent spiritual symbols, which shows that there's definitely a high-minded intelligence creating most of the crop circles.
From our seated position inside this crop formation, we saw appear in the distance, about half a mile from our location, a bright orange orb of light hanging just above a tree. A couple of minutes later, a second one appeared, a red one. After a few moments of watching this, and it was not long at all, a military helicopter appeared on the scene from behind us, tore past us at high speed, at very low altitude. This is a heavy military helicopter, heading directly for where these lights were at these trees. And as it arrived on the scene, you know, we watched the helicopter with all its flashing lights heading for these two lights. As it got there, these two lights blinked out immediately and reappeared in the landscape about 7 miles away over westwards. The helicopter was just literally spinning on the spot. He obviously didn't know what was going on, and you know, 1 or 2 minutes later the helicopter took off, disappeared again the same way it came, and these two lights blinked out and re-emerged where they had been prior to the arrival of the helicopter. Very strange.
We seem to be getting a lot of attention from unmarked helicopters that do very strange things. I'm not a great believer in conspiracy theories, but in actual fact, I begin to wonder why it is that whenever serious crop circles appear and people are in them, we seem to be being filmed and we seem to be being buzzed.
It's definitely something going on up here for us. Look at this.
There seems to be an element of the British government, the British military, somewhere they're paying attention. They know, I believe, that we know that something really strange is going on. I don't think they really probably know much more than we do, but I do believe that they are watching this subject. They know that it's happening. They know that they cannot do anything about it. You know, hence the media suppresses it, because that's the, you know, then if they can't explain it, they're not going to promote it as a genuine phenomenon. It's much easier to say, we've got these two old men that, you know, say they've done it all, so you can go back to sleep and you can watch some TV.
We are very much in the headquarters of the military round here. But the official line was to ignore them because they had certain military significance. In other words, they were testing something from outer space or whatever. And that they very cleverly linked this to the fact that this is the centre of such an ancient civilization and the Stone Age and all the rest of it. So that was a way they could divert attention to what they were doing, which after all, as I said earlier, is criminal damage when it comes down to it. I'm a skeptic. I believe some of these are undoubtedly man-made, but there are others which do slightly defy logic. And therefore I'm interested in what is causing these.
What seemed to fit the bill was a kind of thing that exists above a thunderstorm called a sprite, which is a plasma tube that comes down from the ionosphere. Well, they're saying there must be something like this involved in crop circle formation. So I think there's evidence to show that there's consciousness involved in this, because people have filmed these plasma balls in association with crop formations, and they behave like living beings. They have virtually all the same qualities of living beings. but they are transient, so they only last a short time.
Some of the crop circles that have appeared this year couldn't possibly have been boarded because they've never been flat. They've had circular or angled things. There's one particular crop circle, which is my favourite one for the year, but it absolutely has always been laying at 30 degrees. Couldn't possibly have been boarded because you would have had to tread on top of it to carry on boarding. If that one particularly has been done by people, that they have some incredible equipment, and they are not just the ordinary people from the pub that go out after a few beers and have a bit of fun. And they definitely didn't do it with a bit of stick and a hole on the end of it, out the end of their cap. That they must have had thousands of pounds worth of laser equipment to mark out the circles they've been doing. And if that's the case, they probably have a reason for doing it, and it would be very interesting to try and find out what that reason is.
I've always felt that it's most important in crop circles to emphasise that it's not something done to the earth and imposed on it, it's a combination that makes it work. So the earth elementals, the energies that we're not aware of and can't see, are in agreement with the pattern that's being overlaid.
I feel that the crop circles are a manifestation of a spiritual moment, combined energies and consciousness, the power of the earth, of Gaia, of the goddess, of the mother, and all that magnetism and deep magic within the earth. You have the plant kingdom, who are so connected, who acquiesce to this magical happening. The light of the universe and the beings from beyond this earth, the celestial beings and the beings from the stars. But you also have us. You have human consciousness. You have human spirituality. You know, we're travellers on a great journey.
So I think we need to move beyond this whole issue of who's making the circles and start celebrating what's coming in. And yes, contact is already here. We have this multi-dimensional contact. We've got craft everywhere flying all over the world. The sightings are here. The contact is here. Everything's here. And we just take it forward, moment by moment, and celebrate it rather than fear it. Because if we understand and embrace the fact that it's already happening, we can diminish this fear.
Simply by looking at a photograph of a crop circle that has been laid down in the fields, you experience something. Some people claim that your DNA is changed as you look at a picture of a crop circle. Some believe that your consciousness is raised. Some feel that your physical being is enhanced, that somehow your frequencies are being raised, lightened, improved. Many people have experienced being physically healed of whatever their infirmity is in a crop circle. This too is a testament to the unusual, positive, benign energies that are in many of these crop circles.
In 1995, I was doing my first night watch on top of Knapp Hill, Alton Barnes, and I was there with Bert Janssen, and we had decided to take turns. So I was sitting in this little chair overlooking the valley of the Eastfield and everything. It was a really beautiful night, and Bert was actually sleeping in a sleeping bag there. And at some time, around 12:30 at night, there was this electrostatic sound behind me, like a crackling noise, and the weirdest thing happened, and that was my response, because I got into this bliss state, like all of a sudden, bang, I was in a bliss state. I'd never experienced that before, so it was really weird. And I never got up, I didn't look around, I was just intensely happy. And this sound started to move. It moved towards me, in front of me, and as I was looking directly into the sound, there was nothing there, there was nothing to be seen. I couldn't see any object or entity or shape, but the sound was very particularly there. And there was this intense sensation of contact. And I was just sitting there in total bliss with a smile from ear to ear. And there was a telepathic communication started flowing. And one of the things I very vividly remember is that they were saying over and over again, welcome, we are so glad you're here. We are so happy you have finally arrived. You are finally there. And they did it over and over again. And later, of course, you think, was it me sending that out or was I receiving that? I don't know, but it was so intensely there, and it was like a tape that was played over and over again. So there was something there. I couldn't see it. I guess it was because I wasn't ready to see it. This was back in '95 and I was so green, and it would probably have freaked me out. But that contact sensation and that state of utter bliss, I of course never forgot. And that's one of the reasons why I keep coming back, because you simply want more. It is so divine, it is so intense and so lovely. It was this wave of unconditional love that washed over me and through me, and it was just spectacular. Well, the next morning we walked down, and at the foot of Knapp Hill was this beautiful fresh grass circle, just a small one like this wide, and it was fresh. We'd seen that verge before we went up. There were 2 small circles there. There was nothing else. We'd filmed them and looked very thoroughly, and we came down and there was a 3rd one, and it was meticulous and extremely energetic. You could feel it. It was very, very present. And of course, for me, that was a direct link between this contact, these entities, whoever they were, because I never saw a thing, who made this contact with me and who welcomed me, and the grass circle in the morning.
The Silent Circle Cafe is the daily gathering place for researchers and anyone else interested in crop circles. Information on new crop circle formations is reported immediately and mapped out at the cafe. I enjoyed spending time with the owner, Charles Mallet.
In 1999, over at Milk Hill, that's 5, 6, 7 miles behind us. Interesting formation. It's very interesting and noteworthy to mention the conditions in a field of oilseed rape. I mean, the plants were this high, you know, so you can walk into the field and it's like Alice in Wonderland, and it's a tangle, you know. The idea of constructing some kind of coherent pattern in there is almost beyond my comprehension. I can barely walk through one of those fields without getting lost, you know, because you just can't, you know, you just can't see where you're going. You're just walking in a tangled mess of plants. So every single plant was very neatly bent in a kind of a seamless bend with no kinking or breaking or damage. So all of the plants just above the ground were bent over and growing horizontal along the ground. So immediately it was pretty apparent that this was a genuine formation. So I made my way into the formation before dark because it would be impossible to find it in the dark. But about midnight something really strange happened, and it wasn't the physical appearance of anything. It was just a feeling. For instance, 5 minutes earlier I could hear the cars on the road, which were maybe a quarter mile in front of me. I could just, the general environment, you know, the animals, the wildlife, it was sort of, you know, there was a background din of evening noises. Around about midnight, this whole background din went away, it disappeared. It was like suddenly I could not hear or perceive any kind of crickets or mice or cars on the roads or people on the hills, anything. I looked down, and all of a sudden, right in front of me and just behind this standing clump of plants, this orb just appears from nothing. It just kind of like fades in over a second, much like kind of like tuning a radio into another station where it just, you know, you cue it in. Anyway, it was there, but very odd. All it done was appear, hang there, and 2 minutes later, maybe a bit less, it faded out in the same way that it had appeared, and that was it. Then this, you know, a couple of minutes later, this whole kind of feeling of being enclosed in some kind of envelope just faded to nothing. All the environmental sounds reappeared, and it was like something had been lifted. But during the entire event, there was nothing what I perceived as interaction or communication at all. It was a fairly objective experience. A really interesting facet of that is, I've been out in these fields and in these circles for years, always have my camera ready, hanging around my neck, cued, ready to shoot. And it did not occur to me for a second to pick up my camera in those 1 or 2 minutes of this thing in front of me, and I've been looking for this for years. I'm sat there like a kind of lemon not using my camera. It does seem to have been a genuine experience which I have not been able to explain to this day.
It's not what you see, it's what you don't see. It's not who you know, it's who you really are. It's who you really are.
So yeah, on many occasions I have woken up, seen brand new crop circles at 5 o'clock in the morning, which still maintain like a layer of dew across the top of the crop. If you're there that early, you can have a good, sensible look around for physical evidence, physical traces, footprints, broken plants, crushing, the kind of damage you'd expect people to do. And there seems to be a smooth, seamless mechanism or delivery mechanism at work where the whole thing just swirls down.
This particular one is a pentagram and a cross, which, needless to say, that means different things to different people. The interesting bit about this lay for me is that the cross is quite nicely laid out, and it has these borders that are just perfectly laid. Now from down here it's like, wow, that's kind of different, and from the sky it's clearly a borderline, which is really the art of these things.
These are bent nodes. That's what I look for, because where you get tight corners, instead of the crop being broken and bent to make an angle or a spiral, these are actually bent right on these little brittle nodes. And if you look at that, you can see that it's like being heated and stretched.
It's actually puffed up more than the average.
Well, there have been people that have been doing research on this, and what they've discovered is that there is a chemical change in the wheat, and they have been subjected to some kind of heat, but from the inside out, so it's like a microwave kind of heat, but just enough to bend the nodes, because any more and they just burst into flame, because this stuff is so, volatile. Look at the angle on that one.
That's a really good one. We move into a totally different field here, which is the round flow circle. It's a whole different thing. I mean, you can feel it like water. It just flows, and the entire circle, which is huge, goes just like this. So now we're at the beginning of the pentagram. Again, one more change of energy, one more change of flow. It's no longer like the waterway, it becomes more of a cross path, and it's a full star or pentagram that you can actually walk the pattern of the star. It's flawlessly laid out, and you can see that it's like the waves kind of wash up onto the sides, not like anywhere else in the circle. Each one having its own energy, its own way of artistry. Today's the day of harvest. Today is the 1st of August, and we've waited a while. So, I mean, this is actually quite a nice example, considering that we're right at the end of the season. It's just like artwork everywhere, and the longer you take looking at things, the more you see. And frankly, everybody coming into a circle can be standing in the same spot and have a totally different perception and a different feeling. That's what's magical and wonderful about these fields, because there's no rules. It's just all what you want to see.
And so if you see me sitting here being a fountain of tears, it's for them, the makers. And if somebody says, well, we made that crop circle, well, I don't mean them. I mean them.
My nation is Nayukongska. We are known as the children of the middle waters. These formations, these glyphs that are appearing in these fields very much interrelate to my traditions very directly, and have had for 5,000–6,000 years, some of these. But these symbols have a way of bringing all people together as one. And in my way, we call that the way of the ectomy, or the way of the sacred spider, that all things are tied together. Through its web, it explains that everything in the universe is connected. All people, all things, we're all related. And related to the Tree Nation people, the Earth Nation people, the Cloud Nation people, the Makpia. These symbols come back and explain these things again one more time. So they're important to us, and we understand those elements of spirit and truth of the universe. So hope.
I went into the Silent Circle Cafe one day, and it was a day when a couple new circles had shown up in the fields. So he and I and Nick hopped in my car, and we had a great, great day together. The first circle we went to was absolutely beautiful.
Magical times.
Magical times.
Yep.
It was this burial that had these circles coming off it, and every single circle had an exceptional centerpiece. They were woven and braided and twisted, and we were some of the early people in, so it was absolutely stunning. Every bit of it was just like a work of art. I think it was my favorite circle I've seen.
About 4 or 5 years ago, I was flying with an American crop circle researcher, and we were on our way to a formation out just beyond Pusey, just that way, about sort of 10 miles or so. And I normally look around at fields when I'm on the way to a crop circle, or anywhere else for that matter, to check to make sure that there's always somewhere to land should we have a problem with the aircraft, or if we run low on fuel or something like that. And so I was looking around at the fields and making a mental note. And we flew a strict path and then came back on a reciprocal, so we were directly over our outbound journey, flying over the same fields.
Middle of the day.
Middle of the day,
I think it was July, and the journey outbound and inbound took no more than 15 minutes, and on the way back, in one of the fields that I know was completely empty, there was crop circle.
And did you see any people, any tractors, anything that could be a human circle maker?
Nope, no, didn't see any people, no cars, there were no roads near it, and it was very strange. Very
Was
strange.
it a beautiful formation or something quite simple?
I wouldn't say it was an awfully complicated formation. It was a series of circles, but in order for someone to make that in 15 minutes, and I didn't even see them, so I can't explain that.
We certainly can't keep thinking that crop circles are man-made efforts in the middle of the fields. Many of them may be, but we certainly can't cling to this when so many hundreds and hundreds of impeccably designed sacred geometric form.
We can certainly think in terms of symbols and archetypes and this kind of thing, but in the end we're talking on a wordless level which is next door to silence, but it's not exactly. And there's this funny business as well, and that is they know and understand us well, and they are somehow of us, although my personal perception is that they're very otherworldly too, but perhaps we are as well. Britain is such a multi-layer historic environment. People in the millennia before us have located sacred sites, stone circles, dolmens, mounds, churches, crosses, and these kinds of things on natural sacred sites which are connected up with hills and other natural features. And so basically you can track them out on the map. And it just so happens that they can be arranged in exact straight lines, and strictly speaking a ley alignment is for such sites which are exactly on a straight line with one another. And around places like Glastonbury and around Avebury and Stonehenge and certain other parts of Britain, this is quite dense, this kind of network. But it is certainly possible to track these alignments, and I've made a map of Glastonbury and 25 miles around it to show those.
And no surprise that a lot of the crop circles are sitting right on those ley lines.
Yes, or close to them, or there are distinct relationships with ancient sites. I mean, this particular formation here is just half a mile, just under a kilometre away from Avebury Stone Circle, which is the largest stone circle in the world. And so what more association can you get than that? There have been others straight outside Stonehenge, for example. The most visited crop circle in the world was just over the road from Stonehenge.
I have been visiting crop circles very happily for 19 consecutive summers. What a wonderful adventure that is. I'm talking to you today about a few of the crop circles that happened in 2009. I'm going to begin with a simple glyph that happened under the White Horse at Milk Hill. 2 nights later, additional features were added to that glyph. And then 1 week later, a very long tail of what looks like ancient writings, or perhaps extraterrestrial writing, some of us think. And here is a picture of the completed glyph and the long tail. We can't help but wonder if messages are being given to us from somewhere else, from off-planet, from some other intelligence. That seems to be true of so many crop circles. And in 2009, we had many messages, many figures given to us in crop circles. For instance, we had various kinds of insect-looking patterns as crop circles. Insects are a very important part of life on Earth. We also had various crop circles of life forms that seem to be in the sea. Some of them seem to be creatures that might skim along the top of the water in lakes and more placid bodies of water. And then we had jellyfish formations, as if focus is being put on life in the sea, jellyfish and squid. And it just happens that actually on Earth there are many, many more jellyfish and squid-like creatures proliferating in our oceans all over the Earth in the last couple of years. You also have flying creatures. One crop circle even depicts a thunderbird, very ancient pattern from many indigenous cultures around the world. And we have birds we can recognize, including the phoenix bird and the hummingbird and other forms. We even have the wise owl form. What is being said to us about these life forms? We are being directed to these life forms. And finally, we have this lovely crop circle, which we consider the Mayan headdress. Large changes may be happening. Hopefully, changes for the better, for all humanity, for all life on Earth, and for all life everywhere.
When we subsequently looked at the formation, it was actually very interesting. Up until this time, there's been no credible evidence to suggest that that formation was anything but the result of some kind of paranormal event.
Some people have told me that it's radioactive inside the circles. Some people said that the cameras have failed to work.
And that moment of magic, that expression of perfection and information is placed there in the field, just like that. It's a picture of the truth.
Only this moment by moment, can you decide how you're going to absorb life. What you've come to do is enjoy it. Learn from it, experience it, enjoy it, and take yourself to the next level. And whether that is ascension into the higher realms, which we are glorifying in our minds, or whether that is death and going to another plane, or whether that's just a more beautiful day than the day before. It's all about being in that moment and focusing and intending that every moment be brighter and more significant than the other.
So, there you are. As far as I'm concerned, it's a question mark.